Okay, so we'll start. Thank you very much. We are very excited to see all of you. We are in the middle of the first piece of a school cycle, and we have schools which started taking their test from 15th of November onwards. More than 53, 54 schools have already completed their tests, and it's so good to see that there are so many more that are still waiting to take the test. Overall, it has been an exciting year for us. We are absolutely thrilled with the kind of response that we have got. So there were some requirements around the overall approach to the test in terms of the sample papers. So we thought we can pick up most important things related to the test, and we'll discuss it in today's call. And there have been requests from new schools which had joined us saying that we would want to be able to have a look at some of the most important aspects of PISA for schools. So let's pick up maybe a couple of more important points and train us on those. So what we'll do is we'll have two parts to the discussion today. The first part is around the question papers, sample question papers. You would have already received these files from us. So I'll be taking you maybe for one or two examples at the max, and we'll try to understand what are the types of questions that PISA asks, the PISA papers have. And in the for benefit of everyone, we don't have the academician team today with us. Would not have been proper to have academician team today because we're in the midst of the program. The schools are taking the tests. So therefore, I thought I will fill in for the academicians. So don't ask me specifically the mathematics, science, reading related questions, but yes, the philosophy behind how the questions are asked, what are the skills that are going to be tested, and how the question papers are going to be marked. So maybe some information which is present in the public domain that I'll be able to share with you. We'll also quickly look at some of the technical aspects of the test today, basically related to how are the test files going to come to you and what you should do after you have received your test files. Our technical team will already be in touch with your lab coordinators, and they will be proactively helping them to load the softwares onto the machines. But some overview about what should we expect from the technical side of things. So we'll get started. We'll quickly, I will open up maybe the science first, and we'll take one question of science and look at the kind of questions that would be asked, type of questions. These files have already been shared with you. So I'm sharing my screen and we will go through it together. So the first very important three rules that you should keep in mind for the question, and this is general also, but specifically in case of science. So 5 scientific processes recognizing scientifically investigable questions, identifying evidence needed in a scientific investigation, drawing or evaluating conclusions, communicating valid conclusions, and demonstrating understanding of scientific concepts. These are the 5 basic principles. And these processes, so when the question is asked, please understand, it is not to test the child's accuracy in terms of their language, their spellings, the way they have constructed their answers in terms of the language. That is not going to be marked. That is going to be absolutely not looked at by the markers. We're going to look at what is the scientific phenomenon involved, whether the child is able to draw a conclusion basis the evidence that has been provided, and whether the scientific concept is explained in answering those questions. Right? So very simple, very important. No language accuracy, no spelling accuracy, all of those things do not matter. As long as the core scientific principle, the concept is explained by the child, it is understood and it's explained by the child. Let's pick up. Therefore, the competencies would be identifying the scientific issues, explaining the phenomena scientifically, as I mentioned, what is the reason of this particular phenomena in scientific language and scientific terms, and explaining the scientific, using the scientific evidence to come to the answer. So let's pick up this as an example. This is a sample question. This talks about a water reservoir, a lake in our case, and the various processes it goes through once it reaches the homes of the people. So there's a grating, stage, then there is a settling pond, then is a filter, there's chlorine is added to the water quality is then tested, and then the water comes into the tap. So these are the various steps that are involved in filtration of the water before it reaches our home. So let's look at the questions that follow this. It is important to have a good source of drinking water. Water found underground is referred to as groundwater. Give one reason why there is less bacteria and particle pollution in the groundwater than in the water from the surface sources such as lakes and rivers. Right? So this is a question for which inferences are supposed to be drawn from the image, and there will be subsequent questions around it. So the question talks about why is the groundwater considered to be, why is there less bacteria and particle pollution in groundwater than in the water from surface bodies such as lakes and rivers? The second question is the cleaning of water happens in several steps involving different techniques. The cleaning process shown in the figure involves 4 steps. In the second step, the water is collected in settling pond. In what way does this step make the water cleaner? So the child has to understand and come up with an answer talking about what would be the benefit of having a settling pond in the process of filtration of water. So they have been given options. The bacteria in the water die, oxygen is added to the water tank, gravel and sand sink to the bottom, toxic substances are broken down. Right? So all of these phenomenon may occur, but at what stage in the filtration process do they occur? That we have to see what is the objective of settling pond. The third question is, in the fourth step of cleaning process, chlorine is added to water. Why is chlorine added to the water? So, and the fifth is suppose the scientists involved in the testing of water at the water plant discover that there are some dangerous bacteria in the water after the cleaning process is completed. What should people at home do with this before drinking that water? And then there are, which of the following diseases can be caused by or health problems can be caused by polluted water. So this is a question. Let's look at how this question will be marked if we have to look at the answers. So I will pick up quickly an answer key, and we'll look at the answers and quickly understand how the whole phenomenon is explained and is marked. So very important point, there are no negative marks in the paper. So the students will not be marked negatively, but there is going to be a scheme of full credit, in some questions partial credit or no credit, right? And the criteria for those are clearly given. What consists of full credit, what consists of partial credit, and what consists of no credit. So for example, in our case, what was the full credit? The full credit for the item 1.1, which is the first question which we were talking about, is we had to say why do we believe that the groundwater has lesser pollution and lesser bacteria than surface water such as lakes and rivers. Now, if the response is referring to groundwater being filtered through the ground, when it goes through sand and dust, the water is cleaned. It has been naturally filtered, because when water goes down to the ground, it will be strained by rocks and sands. One possible direction of answer, that once the water passes through rock and sand, some of the particles may be naturally filtered or strained by those. Or response is referring to the groundwater being encapsulated, therefore protected from pollution, or the surface water is easily more polluted. So some people can take a bath in the pond water, and there would be other activities, human activities, which are happening around it. So most likely of the surface water getting polluted are high. Groundwater is inside the earth, and therefore air pollution cannot make it dirty, because groundwater isn't open, it is located under something. Lakes and rivers can be polluted by air and you can swim in it and so on. That is why it is not clean, because lakes and rivers are polluted by people and animals. Other responses, groundwater is water without much food for bacteria, so they will not survive there. Groundwater is not in the sun, there is blue-green algae. So in such case, this becomes the direction of answer. So if there's a filtration, the process of filtration that has been explained in the first type of response, where rocks and sand acts as strainer for the water and holds the pollutants back, or it is covered and therefore likelihood of human contamination or other activities which happen in open, they will not happen. Therefore, the chances of groundwater being more better than surface water. Now, in case of no credit, the answers like because it has been cleaned, because there is rubbish in lakes and rivers, and does not explain why. Very important. Why should there be more rubbish in lakes and rivers? Because there is less bacteria without giving a phenomenon as to why. Response is obviously referring to cleaning process provided in the figure because groundwater passes through a filter and chlorine is added. A groundwater passes through a filter that cleans it absolutely. These are no credit answers because they would have picked up some information from the image, but tried to add it here because there's no mention of chlorine. How does chlorine get added to groundwater filtration? If that comes, then there's a no credit because students may try to act smart and want to use the inferences from the image and use it for the natural filtration process. Uh, and then there could be the next one, which is the second part of the question, which talks about the cleaning of water happens, and this practically has got multiple options, and those multiple options can be picked up from here. Full credits at the gravel and sand sink to the bottom, and no credit other responses are missing. So it's very clear that the filtration for point number 2 because this is a multiple choice question. The third part of the question was about in the fourth step of cleaning process, chlorine is added to the why is chlorine added to the water? And then we talk about responses referring to removing, killing, or breaking down bacteria to make it free from bacteria. Chlorine kills bacteria or to kill all the alga. These are the possible reasons for giving full credit, but no credit of answers will be given if any scientific phenomenon is not mentioned. Similarly, full credit can given last question that we talked about 1.4, which was about if people are announced, it is announced or it is known that just before going to the homes in home taps, the water still is shown having bacteria sample, what should be done? So the full credit will be given to the students who use the answers like boil the water, other methods of cleaning like adding chlorine and so on, or use a micropore filter of chlorine tablets, are using a micropore pore filter. If those are the responses which are mentioned in the question, then it is given full score, which basically talk about the scientific phenomenon involved in what could be the reason for it being harmful to the human beings, and therefore what should be done to such water if it is known that just before coming home it still has got bacterial pollution. So this is an example of a science question we picked up. I'd be glad to maybe refer to more questions later on if the time permits. Let's quickly pick up. So just to remind ourselves, the type of questions in science will look at the scientific phenomenon and understanding a scientific phenomenon. If there is an scientific evidence presented, the child should be able to check it back. There's no credit given to the spellings, the way the sentence is corrected. All of those things are not taken into account while answering the questions. It can be a full credit, or it can be a partial credit, or it can be a no credit. Full credit will have 2 marks, partial credit will have 1 mark, and no credit will have 0 mark. So there is no negative marking in this case. So let's pick up the next one. Maybe we'll pick up a reading sample question. And I'm going to share my screen. I don't know whether I shared it. Yes. So in reading, the text formats which will come up will be either continuous text or non-continuous text. That's the first thing that we need to look at. And when we look at the reading process, we have to retrieve information from the text. This is the most important skill that is being checked. One of the most important skills that is checked in the questions, how the child should be able to retrieve information from text, then interpreting text and forming a general understanding of that. So using that text to understand and form the general understanding using that text, interpreting. So retrieving information is the first, interpreting the text to get general understanding, and reflecting and evaluating a text contents. Therefore, reflecting and evaluating a text content to use forms and features. So how does a child reflect on that? Those are the three skills that are checked within within reading. As I mentioned, the text could be a continuous text or a non-continuous text. So, and all questions have to be marked. So let's pick up, say, for example, maybe a question around a murder has been committed, but the suspect denies everything. He claims. So the first example, sorry, I will come back to this example later. But see, if you look at the first question is a non-continuous text. So there is a text, then there's a diagram, then there is some information, then then the questions that follow. It's an example of non-continuous text. We are picking an example of a continuous text. The continuous text here is, and you can look at this entire paragraph which is mentioned here. So let's go through this together. A murder has been committed, but the suspect denies everything. He claims not to know the victim. He says he never knew him, never went near him, never touched him. The police and judge are convinced that he is not telling the truth, but how to prove it? Scientific police weapons. At the crime scene, investigators have gathered every possible shred of evidence imaginable. Fibers from fabrics, hairs, finger marks, cigarette ends. The few hairs found on the victim's jacket are red, and they look strangely like that of the suspects. If it could be proved that these hair are indeed his, this would be the evidence that he had in fact met the victim, right? So this is some situation given. Then every individual is unique. Now they're building some context. Specialists set to work. They examine some cells at the root of these hairs and some of the suspect's blood cells. In the nucleus of each cell is in our bodies, there is DNA. What is DNA? What is it? DNA is like a necklace made of two twisted string of pearls. Imagine that these pearls come in four different colors and that thousands of colored pearls, which make up a gene, are strung in a very specific order. In each individual, this order is exactly the same in all cells of the body. Those of the hair, roots, blah, 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 so on and so forth. Then some evidence as to how the whole process happens, what DNA is, just one piece of evidence. More and more often in cases of sexual assault, murder, theft, or crime, the police are having genetic analysis done. Why? To find evidence of contact between two people, two objects, or a person and an object. Proving such contact is often very useful to the investigation, but it does not necessarily provide proof of a crime. It is just one piece of evidence amongst others. So this is a piece that has been given. Now there are 5 questions to it. Answer the following question based on the passage. To explain the structure of DNA, the author talks about a pearl necklace. How do these pearl necklaces vary from one individual to another? So you have to locate the information very clearly. They vary in length. The order of the pearls is different. The number of necklaces is different. The color of the pearls is different. So they have to just now go back and they'll remember that there was some correlation drawn between the pearls and the DNA strands. So they will go here and they'll talk about, they'll have to then now quickly locate where is this information coming in, and the order of the pearl varies from one person to another. So in each individual, this order is exactly the same in all the cells in the body. So if you look at the information that is provided there, now the child has to locate this information in this continuous form of text. So that becomes the first question. What is the author's main aim? What is the objective of the author here? To inform, to warm, to amuse, to convince. So The end of the introduction in italics says, but how to prove it? According to the passage, investigators to try to find an answer to this question by interrogating the witnesses, carrying out genetic analysis, interrogating the suspect thoroughly, going over the results of the investigation again. And then there is law enforcement officials carry out genetic analysis to do what? And which image best describes two strands of DNA? So these are the various 5 questions which were asked after the end of paragraph or continuous text. Let's look at the marking scheme. I'll quickly pull out the answer sheet. Okay, I'm not able to pull up an answer sheet here. I'll come to this later on. Let's quickly pick up uh, a maths example also, and then I'll try and find out the answer sheet for this, and we'll look at how it is asked. But you got a sense of the way the questions are framed, how the questions in science and how the questions in reading section will be framed. So there could be long text followed by questions, or there could be broken text, which is the non-continuous text that comes in. So we'll pick up a sample math sample question, and okay. So the math questions in the PISA-based test for schools, they assess the students' capacity on wide range of subjects like comprehension, analyzing data from tables, charts, and graphs, understanding the time zones, working with money transactions, solving and interpreting mathematical problems in a variety of situations, and then in 3 different dimensions: the content, mathematical process, and reflections. Very important. Does not matter if the final answer is still not correct, as long as the explanation of the mathematical concept is taken care of by the child. So again, for full credit, partial credit, or no credit will be given for the mathematics answers. Mathematics questions. Let's look at math question. So this is a math question. For example, a farmer plants apple trees in a square pattern. In order to protect the apple trees against the wind, he plants conifer trees all around the orchard. Here you see a diagram of this question of this situation, where you can see the pattern of apple trees and the pine trees of any number n of the rows of apple trees. So if the pine trees are X and N are the dots are the apple trees, so he's planting the pine trees and apple trees in this pattern. In the first case, it is 1:8, right? And in next case, it increases in that same proportion. Now the questions that follow is complete the table. So what would be the number of apple trees to the number of pine trees? So you'll have to look at this figure and draw the pattern out of this. So you'll see in the next part that even if the formula is required, that formula is already mentioned. There are 2 formulae you can use to calculate the number of apple trees and the number of pine trees for the pattern described above. The number of apple trees is n square, number of pine trees is 8n, where n is the number of rows of apple trees. So this is a formula already given, so you child don't have to remember the formula, but they have to use this to arrive at the figures and use that concept. So the understanding of how to use the information that is presented, what is the core mathematical concept that is being asked, and how does a child arrive at that answer, that is extremely critical, and that's why the questions will be marked. Okay. So then the third question, if you look at in the same series, the second question is find the value of n and show your method of calculation. As to the formula is already given, is the number of apple trees is n square and the number of pine trees is 8n, where n is the number of rows of apple trees. So that is the formula, and then they have to find n, and what is the way you will use. Then the third question is, suppose the farmer wants to make a much larger orchard with many rows of trees. As the farmer makes the orchard bigger, which will increase more quickly? The number of apple trees or the number of pine trees? Explain how you found out your answer. So, if for me, I would quickly look at it and say, okay, whether the square increases, so whether there's a square and square there, and there is an 8 times n. So between these two, which will grow faster? So I will quickly look at that and explain using it, or some child may use a different way to explain this. And all of those, both those answers will be given full credit if we if we explain our answer as to how we have arrived at it. So what I'll do is I'll see quickly if there are answers here, answer key of this particular question. I'll pick up that and I'll explain the logic behind it. Just give me 1 second. So I'll have to pull up the answer sheet here. But if there are any questions, by the time I pull up the answer sheet and see how the full credit or partial credit or no credit has been given, if there are questions related to anything related to reading, mathematics, and science, the whole approach as to how the sections are covered, how it will appear, I'll answer those. And I'll also try to find out an answer key and quickly pick up these items, and share the answer keys with you. But some of the other things that we need to keep in mind. So once you can expose your students and give them these sample questions, there is a full booklet already shared with you. These sample papers are already shared with you, in which there are only selected few examples. You can give your students and ask them to give it a try, but no preparation as such is required for the test, because it is of the skills of the student and does not really require, as you saw in one of the questions, the formula was also given. It was only asked as to how will you arrive at the situation, what is the reason that you pick up a particular answer. So it will be marked, the questions will be marked basic basis the understanding of the concepts of the child, understanding of how they have inculcated the skills of, somewhere it is locating information, somewhere it is extrapolating information, somewhere it is to understand the concept and explain the scientific phenomenon behind it. So, it's important. There's no preparation required for the students. The second thing that we need to keep in mind is that once the students start attempting the test, uh, once the students start to attempt the test, always remember that once a section is completed, so there will be 3 sections in the first question. So this test contains a cognitive questionnaire. That cognitive questionnaire will have 3 sections: reading, mathematics, and science. If a child starts answering, say, for example, the first child gets mathematics as the first section, another child may get science as the first section. Some may have higher number of mathematics questions, some may have lower number of mathematics questions, some may have some section completely missing. It is also possible. That is how OECD and PISA questions would be. So don't worry if the number of questions for one child is higher in mathematics and some has a higher number of mathematics in questions in science. Those are by design. Every child will get a different set of different section that may appear. Possible that one child will get science first, the other will get mathematics first. But very important note, that once a child completes a section, say a child has completed the science section and submitted that section, child cannot go back to that section. So always keep that in mind. This is one important thing. If they have to go within the platform, once they open the platform, it is a one-click platform. Once they enter their code, the test will start and they will keep on going and answering those questions. Before submitting, they can go back to those questions. There will be small squares where they can click and go back to those questions and pick up which question they would want to recheck or attempt it. But once they submit that section, there will be a warning also which will come that you will not be able to come back to this section again. So once you click on that, you move out of that section, you cannot come back to that section. That is a very important thing. The second important thing to remember is, at the time of submission, please ensure that your lab coordinators look at that machine. And if there is a yellow button or yellow colored button, a cloud on top of that screen on which the test is being taken, then they will have to manually click a button. Child does not require to do this. This is the lab coordinator or the proctors who will be required to check that machine. And if the icon of cloud on top right corner of the screen is yellow or brown, they'll have to use the school pin to submit that paper. so that it gets reconciled back and edit. So we'll have more such tech pieces. In the next section, we will talk about the technology processes as to how the files will be coming to you. I'll open it for the questions first. Please ask. Don't ask me any questions related to why n square would be higher than n. Don't ask me any questions related to why the chlorine is added and therefore what should happen. But I'll not be able to answer those. But yes, of course, any other questions about the way marking is done, the way questions are asked, the kind of questions that are asked, or any other questions related to the specific section as to how a section proceeds, I would be glad to answer those. Questions, please. So I'm assuming there are no questions. So let's go to the technical. Okay. Am I
Hello,
not
sir.
audible?
Hello, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you just repeat about that the yellow and the brown slash brown alert which you were talking about? I wasn't able
I
to
will cover
get.
this in technical portion. Don't worry.
Oh,
Basically, this is about reconciling an answer
oh,
sheet. I will
okay,
cover the technical section.
okay, sir.
Okay. Anything else?
Sir, section means it is math, science, reading test. Is it like that?
Yes, ma'am. Each
The
section,
one section
once
includes science. So once the child completes science, he cannot go back. He has to submit and then move forward.
Yes, ma'am. So once they complete one section, they cannot go back to the science section. Say, for example, there are 35 questions, for example, in science. Child starts, answers first, second, leaves fourth to check later, then leaves seventh, and then leaves 10th, and then completes others. Just before completing the section and submitting and moving ahead, there will be a warning which will come that once you go out of this section, you will not be able to come back. One section is one subject, which is either reading or mathematics or science. So if the child is about to complete that section, his window to go back to the questions is only if he has not moved away from that section or submitted that section. So one section is
Is
one.
there any time limit to complete a section, sir? Will it be
No. Overall, 2 years, which the proctors have to maintain. In the it's important that uh, the child completes that section, and uh, once the one once the child completes that section, there's no time limit on per section. But yes, the important point to note is that after 2 hours, the child has to submit the paper. Otherwise, it will not be deemed valid. So proctors have to take a note of the time, and at the end of 2 hours, they have to submit their question paper. So no,
the
section
number of
wise,
questions? The number of questions for all the children, they'll be uniform, they'll be same.
it may not be, that's what I mentioned, it may not be uniform overall as well as per section. Possible that some children may have more science questions, some children may have more math questions, some children may have one section missing completely. It is also possible. So it is a random, these booklets are random, which are created by OECD, so we have no control on that.
I'd like to add a question here. Since you said some of them would have more science, so how does a child know? Like if there are, assuming 30, 90 questions and the child gets 40 science questions, the child wouldn't know what is the balance composition. So how does a child time? Because the
So
overall time limit is 2 hours.
yes,
So a
ma'am.
child should need to know whether the science should be done in sort of 40 minutes.
Ma'am,
So
so
how does a
time.
child take a call? Because
Child,
they
it
can't
is
go
to
back.
child's, yeah. So it is for the child to decide. You never know as to how many total questions will the child get. Roughly, it is going to be around 72 to 75, 70 to 75. That is the total number of cognitive questions which will appear. And some students may have all 70, 75. Some people may have only 65. Some people may have only 63. That is also possible. So there's no way to time it. Time is not a factor as long as they complete as they complete the paper in 2 hours. So that's the general guideline. There is no like a competitive examination, time and accuracy do not matter in this case. The logic and the way the child arrives at the answer, those are the things which are important.
No, but if a child goes out of the section, they can't again, come
Come
back.
back.
And
Yes.
so, if there are more science questions and lesser of maths and English later on, and the child then, because taking in view that 40 minutes approximately, and later on, if there are lesser questions, the child is disadvantaged.
No, ma'am, there's no, so it, as I said, no child is at disadvantage. It is completely balanced in that sense. If some children, and each question has a history behind it. So the way the booklets are created, it is always a fair chance for every student. So if it is higher in one subject, it will be always lower in the other. So it is going to be that ways. It is always balanced. So there is no way to, there's no way that one child will be advantaged over the other. Over
Good
the other.
evening, good evening,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
regarding what was being discussed now, when a child logs in, does the child know how many sections that question paper has? Will the child get to know?
The child will not be able to go.
So
Child,
you said there are three sections. Maybe there are all the three for a child, or maybe a section is going to be missed also for the child.
in some cases it might be in that that one section is missing, but
Yes,
normally
no,
we haven't.
I was just thinking, what if a child has got all the three sections, and now just now you were mentioning that a maximum of 70 to 75 questions are there. The madam who spoke just now asked you whether it will be available. If the child knows, maybe the child need not know the section. On a total, there are 75 questions, and in half an hour or 1 hour, the child has finished 50 questions. The child knows the remaining 1 hour I can use it for the next 25
So
questions,
you
right?
cannot, ma'am, you cannot say how many questions. So there's no way to predict
How
that.
do no? I'm as teachers, we are just wondering how do our children be able to judge what time to use or how much they can be able to use. That is one thing. Second, how do I know how many sections I have got to answer as a student when I
So,
log in?
ma'am, there
Sir,
would
good
be.
evening, sir. In addition to that, just please, may I be allowed to raise this question? Not only that, it's not just about the total time and how much time a child can dwell on a single question. I think as a child who is taking the test, I think should have some calculation about that. And not only that, how will the child know the total number of questions on that test? Will there be any indication on the first page, the first window? That normally any paper has this question paper contains 12 questions. How will the child ensure that the child has taken every question on the test and has completed the paper?
So, ma'am, there is, so if you look at the platform, one question only will be displayed at one time. So it is not, so one case, whatever is the, say, for example, uh, we saw this section, just go back to the examples that we had. For example, in the first case, there was a diagram, and then it was in science case, there was a diagram. So a diagram followed by some text, then question one, which has a subpart, then the question two, then the question three, then the question four, then the question five. So it might happen the same question repeats over 2 to 3 screens, but there will always be one screen, and that screen will have that question. So child will have to attempt that and go next, or the child can skip and go to the next screen. So there's no way to know how many I have, so yes, the child can go back and click an icon there and see how many have I attempted, how many are left. But there is no prediction. There's no way for us to know that how many questions would be there for this particular child. They'll have to go
Well,
through the
it's not
paper.
about whether we can know, whether the child will get to know how much I have to answer, how
Yes,
many
ma'am.
are there. In
Yes,
each, when the
yes.
child clicks open a section, first section, maybe it's reading, the child gets to know there are 7 questions or 8 questions to answer on a whole. He gets to know that. He sees how many are there. That's
The
what you
child
mean?
will know,
Section
yes.
wise, he will be able.
So, ma'am, as I said, child can go and see how many are there, how many questions are there in this section for me.
Okay.
That's where I'm going. That was I trying to explain, ma'am. Suppose a child has attempted 6 questions and now wants to skip and go to the next one. He has skipped, say, some questions. Now he wants to go back and check which were the ones which I had skipped. So he can go to the grid and it will have small squares which will tell them question number 1 is locked, which you have already attempted. Question number 2 is locked. Question number 3 is locked. Question number 4 is not attempted. Question 5 is not attempted. Question 7 is not attempted. Question 30 is not attempted. So child will be able to see the overview of that section.
Okay, now my reading session is over. I'm going to go to the next. Without submitting the first section, I cannot open the second session.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
The section completes, then the child moves to the next section.
Sorry, sir. That is where I feel the remaining sections and the number of questions that the child has to answer, a bit of knowledge about that may help the child to take more time for that particular section or not. If the child knows for sure that these are the 2 sections and I will have to answer, for instance, say 30 plus 30, 60 questions, then the child may not dwell too much, they may not spend so much time in solving a particular question and may decide to submit this section and move to the next section. So that is where I feel, I don't know whether the other teachers agree with me. That is where I think in the beginning, is it possible for the child to know the total number of sections and the total number of questions in each of the sections? That will help the child to be mentally prepared on how much time I can dwell on each section. Thank you.
So let me answer it, ma'am. There will be 3 sections for each child. Very unlikely that one section will completely be missing. Very, very unlikely, but it might happen. But there's no way to know how many questions per section will each child get, because all of the answers, the question booklets are going to be randomized. So there's no way for us to know that how many questions will actually the child get. Overall, the outer limit is around 72 to 75 questions. That is the overall outer limit. Some students may get less, some students may get more. And it is absolutely not for the child's individual, because there is no child level report that gets generated. It is a school level report of the skills of the student. So therefore, the objective of the test is not to test the child's time usage and accuracy in terms of how a competitive examination does. That is not what this test checks. This is completely skills of the students and the profile of the overall profile of the school as to how the skills have been developed in the children who have undergone the studies in this particular school. So there is no way to know how many actual questions will a child get. Overall, there are going to be 73 to 75 questions. In 70 to 75 questions, in some cases 68, 67 also, in some cases 73, 72 also, but it will be balanced. That is the first section, that is the cognitive section of the questionnaire. So it is for 2 hours, 2 hours to finish this section. Each section, child can go back and refer to the questions in that section which the child has not attempted. But once a child moves from that section, they cannot go back to that section. By section, I mean subject of reading, mathematics, and science. So if a child is within the science section, he can always go from 1 to 33, 33 to 1, 2 to 27 or 27 to 2. They can go to a grid and click on the regular button and then attempt those. After he has completed a section, he cannot go back to that section. That is defined. No way for us to know how many total questions will the child get. That is not defined, but overall it is going to be fairly balanced. Roughly around 70 to 75 questions each child will get, should get, maybe a little lesser, maybe within that range, but that's how it is. 2 hours is the time. It has to be noted by the proctors, and they will ensure that the child completes it. 2 hours. There's a 30-minute of student questionnaire following the cognitive questionnaire. So after the 2 hours are completed, children can take 5 minutes break, and then the next section starts, which is the student questionnaire. It is socio-economic. I'll try and pull up a quick file and showcase you the type of questions that are asked in student questionnaire. And those are the kind of questions that will be asked in student questionnaire. It is half an hour. It is the social emotional skills of the student and the socioeconomic background of the students. I'll quickly look at that section also. So I see some questions in the chat. This talks about what are the timings for tomorrow's exam. Up to you. I don't know how many batches are there. Up to you. You can start early. You can start during the day. But overall, you have to budget around 2.5 to 3 hours. 3 hours per batch. 2 hours of cognitive paper, then 5-10 minutes of break. Then you can start with the cognitive section. You complete it for half an hour. So roughly around 3 hours would be per batch. You can start and do as many batches as number of computers you have. Okay, so let's move to this cognitive questionnaire part. Just give me one small second. I'll pull up a file and showcase the type of questions. Again, this will be contextualized for Indian standards. Some of the things that you find in answers may not be relevant to you. In the options may not be relevant, but rest assured they are contextualized for Indian situation. This is an example of the student questionnaire. This is just to give you a reference on the type of questions that will be asked. Not necessarily these questions will be asked. And this is to draw inferences between the subjects and the aptitude of students towards it, and overall socioeconomic background of the students. So in this questionnaire, there are no right answers or wrong answers. Your answers should be the ones that are right for yourself. That's the general rule here. For example, in what grade are you in? So then there would be sections here. Each country may have a different nomenclature. In India, whatever is the nomenclature, it may come. It may or may not be there, but this is the type of question which is asked in that. Which one of the following programs are you in? Now, this again, the programs is not relevant to us in India. There might be some other things which will be mentioned in a similar question like this. On what date were you born, for example? So there will be an option for them to pick up this. Are you a male or female? So gender of the student. What is the highest level of schooling completed by your mother? And there would be some options given. So mother's qualification may be asked. It will be of course contextualized. Don't go by what is written here. It is an international nomenclature which is mapped to an Indian nomenclature, and then that comes up. So what is the highest level of schooling completed by mother? Similarly, does your mother have any of the following qualifications? So there might be a PhD and master's, graduation, or so on. So those will be maybe a simple type of question. What is the highest level of schooling completed by your father? Same type of question, but with Indian context. Then there may be which of the following are in your home? A study desk, a room of your own, educational software, link to internet. So these are some of the examples which could be there. How many of these are at your home? Televisions, cars, rooms. So there's no figure asked, but yeah, a reference of how many books do you have in your home? So these are the type of questions which are there in the student questionnaire. Very easy to answer. No preparation required, but child should know about the education qualification of their parents, what is their date of birth, what is the overall sense of the child towards answering some basic bit of information. So this is the second part of the test which we was talking about. 2 hours of cognitive questionnaire, 30 minutes of student questionnaire, and then the test gets completed. Always remember to inform your children that once they complete this section, they should check their questions, and if they want to go back within that section, they should go. Otherwise, nothing else is important. All other things are taken care of. Now, coming to the technical side of the things, most of you have nominated coordinators, lab coordinators, or technical coordinators for the test. They would have started receiving calls. Some of them would have already done the installation of the software also. The software is called Jennison Replay. It is OECD's software to conduct PISA and PISA for schools. The software is called Replay, Jennison Replay. It comes in the form of files. There will be, let me open up the kind of package that would have come to you. Say, for example, I don't know whether we have, let's pick up this. So a folder like this will be sent, would have been sent to your coordinators. This folder is for that school, and it will have the files, in fact, 6 files in all. There would be a folder called Jennison Replay in it. This Janison Replay will have software folder, softwares in it. Janison Replay framework, and a zip file which contains the test packages. This will be guided by the technical team how to load this software onto your computer machines. So they will call proactively your lab coordinators to install the software. This folder will be shared with you. In an email will come to you, a detailed email will come to you. It will have your software in that folder. That software is to be loaded onto the machines, and our technical team will be guiding and doing one installation together, and then the rest of the installations will happen. As I mentioned already, around 55 schools, and in fact more, 60 schools now would have completed their tests. It was not a problem in any of the schools. If there is any technical challenge that comes up, our team is always there to help you. But very simple installation. The process will be defined by the technical team. There's also a document which has been shared with your lab coordinators as to how to install it. And there's a helpline number also which has been published. Please ask your coordinators proactively reach out to that number. But our team does call back and talk to your coordinator and gets the software loaded. The other files are basically 3 files. The first file is the student eligibility file. That student eligibility file will have the data that was sent to us. It was run through an internal test where the age eligibility criteria was checked. Once the age eligibility criteria, you will have against the eligibility column, which is the second last column of this, there would be let me see if I can share. I don't want to share confidential data with you, but maybe a sample of how this eligibility sheet has to be read. Okay. So this is a file which will come. I've hidden some portions of this file. So you will have a file like this, which will come, which will have the student code, and there would be the eligibility column. So if you look at the eligibility column, some students are yes, some students are yes WC. So both are eligible to write yes and yes WC. Yes WC are special. These are the category which we have internally picked, and they would have be borderline cases, but they are subject to conditions. With conditions, they are eligible to apply. You got nothing to do with those students which are marked yes and yes WC are eligible to write the test. So you look at this and you start allocating the codes. Each child, so this is the child eligibility sheet for you to know that which child is eligible to write. If the eligibility shows no, then the child is not eligible to write. Even if the child writes, we will not be considering that child's response towards the end report. But please ensure that the students which are marked no do not appear. That is it. So, but if there is a condition where you think that the child should be allowed, then please inform us in the remarks column after say, for example, this particular child, mention that while the child is ineligible, we have allowed the child to attempt. So you can allow them, they can write the test, but we know that this child is not to be taken into account in the final score. The system already does it, but just a backup for us to know. So this is the general principle, general guideline. So if it is yes or yes WC, children are eligible to appear. If it is mentioned no, then the child does not appear. This column, N column, is actually attendance. This attendance is to be marked by you on the day of the test, and your coordinator should then send across this attendance file back to us. So you just mark yes or no, or you mark present or absent. Those are the valid answers. Just mention those against the particular child. As I mentioned, each code will have child's. If you have shared the name of the child with us, the name will appear. If the child name is not been shared by you, there will be a code that you will assign. That code would be there. So you can mention that child is appeared or not appeared. Sometimes, say, for example, item number 5, row number 15, 16 are not eligible. best practice is not to allocate those codes to the other students, but even if you allocate, just mention which students have been allocated that code. So that's the way you will always get more than the number of students, the number of codes, which will be, I will just show another file which will have student codes in it. It will be similar copy of this, but with an additional column, 2 columns additional, which will be the cognitive code of this child, of the paper, and the questionnaire code of the child. I'll show that file also to you. Any questions so far?
Good evening, sir.
Sorry.
Good evening, sir. Am I audible to you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We can hear.
Okay. I have one question. I just wanted to ask that is there any software configuration? Means we have Windows 7 in few computers in our labs. So whatever software you are going to install, will that be okay with Windows 7?
So no, ma'am, this has already been shared. I think your lab coordinators would know it. No, Windows 7 is not supported, not recommended. Software
Okay.
will work, but it will malfunction. It is either Windows 10 or Windows 11.
Okay, fine.
It's important. It's important to note. Yeah. This
Okay.
information is already shared with the lab coordinators. There's a manual which also has been shared, and there's a training of the coordinators which was also done. So if you require any special attention, just please reach out to the number. Sonika has put the number in the chat box. This number is there. You can always call. We are active typically from 8:30 onwards. But in case we are busy or the line is busy, just call again and we will be able to support you.
Okay.
Windows 11, Windows 10, those are the configurations
Okay.
for Windows
Fine,
machines.
fine.
Or Mac books and Chromebooks also have their individual guidelines. So don't worry about this too much. Technical team will be working very closely with you. Even we get involved in cases where we are not able, where there's a problem that a special case comes up. Almost all documented cases are there already with more than 55, 60, 57 schools, now 60. In fact, 60 schools already taken the test. So any problem that you may think of has already been encountered by one or the other. But normally it is a very smooth test because it is conducted globally on the same platform. So no problems have been encountered so far, and it goes on smoothly. So I was talking about the
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sir, this is Kiran from Fountainhead School, Surat.
In fact,
Actually,
your
we
file
have,
was the one which I had opened. I've not shared any data out of that file. Thank you. Yes, sir. Please ask.
yeah, so we have received two different Excel sheet. There is a student list in one of the sheets, and there are the student IDs on the other sheets.
I
So
will
is
just
it
open up that.
okay? Yeah. So is it okay if we, create other sheet and merge those, student ID and name, so that we get to know that this ID is assigned to a specific user?
Yes, please go ahead and use that. As I said, these are just replicas of one another, just that you can always do it. I'll show that sheet. Let me just open up that sheet. And in fact, I'll take your example only. There's no confidential data here as of now. You cannot read because it's all now coded.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is the sheet which you would have received. So this is the school ID. This is the child ID. And you see that there is no name here. This is how the file will come to you. But the number of columns will exactly match with what there is in the student data. This is the first code, which is the cognitive test access code. The second one is questionnaire access code, which is the second 30-minute questionnaire code. So suppose a child, this particular child in the series, which is number 1 in the series, suppose its name is Sonika, then the Sonika is to be given both these codes, and there is a student,
So
there's
two codes for one child.
2 codes for one child, one cognitive test code and one questionnaire access code.
Okay.
First code has to be, always remember,
Yeah,
cognitive
that
code
is
has
what.
to be used first. That is the best practice, recommended practice. Some students start entering the questionnaire code because the platform is same. It will start the student questionnaire for those children. But ensure that you mention it in your guidance that first complete the cognitive test using the cognitive code, then a 5-minute break, and then the student questionnaire will be questionnaire code will be accessed or used by the students. So always remember to use these codes, in the series. Say, for example, if some student is not missing, is not eligible, say, and then 13 number is a non-eligible student. So best to avoid 13 to be allocated to someone. But if it has been allocated, just mention the name of the student against the attendance sheet that this code has been used by this particular child. It is always mapped to a particular number, but it is not mapped to the student's name. The data doesn't, child's data does not reside on on the PISA authorities servers or machines. No child data exists there. No date of birth exists there. All of that is between you and us, and that data is not shared with them. This is how you will get your student questionnaire code.
Okay, and is it fine if we put a kind of a sticker on the student table, which contains the cognitive, I mean, these test codes and their student ID, I mean, the enrollment
That is the
number
best
and all.
practice. That is the best practice, that you pick up, maybe print this into a sheet and have slips which will be pasted just next to the
So
computer.
there will be no misunderstanding.
There will be no misunderstanding. That is the best way to conduct the test. Yes. Do remember to mark the attendance in the Excel sheet, though. That is very important.
Sure.
Okay. Any more questions?
Good evening, Adilji.
Good evening.
This is Joydeep sir from DPS Newtown.
Hi, Jaideep sir. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good, good, good. Thank you very much for attending the session today.
Yeah. I was there from the beginning itself. Now, there are two questions which I have for you. The first thing is that we have our exam, as you know, we have our exam on in the middle of January, 13, 14, 15 January. So we haven't received the mail regarding software now. So when are we supposed to receive it? I mean, is there a tentative
So within the
deadline
next
or something?
Yeah, within next 2-3 days, we'll start distributing these codes to the respective schools. Typically expect around 5 days, 5 working days in advance that you will get these files. But we will, since there is going to be a New Year break and so on, and a Christmas break, we will try and fast track distribution. The codes are getting generated. The moment the codes get
Okay.
generated, it will be by tomorrow.
Yeah.
Expect by Monday that you will have your files, unless somebody's test is tomorrow, which they would have already received the files.
Okay.
But you will receive the files well in advance. Don't worry.
Okay. No, I'm actually asking about the software details. So regarding the software installation and downloading and all those things. So when are we supposed to get those if you have a test in the middle of January?
So as I mentioned, sir,
Okay.
expect Monday
So within the
onwards
next
that
few
you
days. Fine.
will receive.
Okay. One more thing is regarding the paper. You said that a child cannot assess how many questions are there in the entire paper, or there could be sections having different number of questions, and a section might be missing altogether. Now, with these kind of, we would actually like to meet your academic team.
So, sir,
Could
it
you
is
please
not
make, yeah,
recommended that academic team answers these questions, because this is not,
okay,
academic team does not have any say in the question booklet or how it is designed, what will happen. This is
okay,
standard OECD protocols. These are
okay,
created centrally. They are distributed in a very secure way. There's no way to
hmm,
know, and academic team will also not be able to know what is the uh, what is the number of questions that each child will get. But rest
hmm,
assured that more than 17,000 now students have already completed and written this test, and
hmm,
without any preparation. Some schools took
hmm,
only 6 days from the day they decided to take the test, and I have many examples of such schools which
okay,
actually went with the spirit of the test, that no preparation is required. Within 6 days
hmm,
from the day of registration, they took the test. No problem at
okay,
all. Students love it, and students, they want to go ahead and do it on their own. No
hmm,
preparation will help them to do better or worse. It is just that kind of questions that are asked. Giving them an exposure of that would be a good idea.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So before I close, I wanted to share that answer key for that maths problem. I love this problem. A full credit if the all 7 entries are correct. You remember the apple and the pine trees and the ratio in which they were to be planted. So 2 or more errors, no credit. Correct entries like this, both 25, 40 are incorrect, everything else is correct. Answering this question corresponds to a difficulty level of 548 on the PISA mathematics scale across OECD countries. 49% of the students answered correctly. You will give this booklet is already with you. It would be a good thing if, out of curiosity, as maths teachers or science teachers or reading teachers, if you look at this, this is a well done document, 322-page document, which you can always refer to, and it'll give you a complete idea of how the questions are, how the full credit is given and how partial credit is given. So look at the way the various ways in which a student, if he has attempted that second part of the problem, all of them will get full credit. Whether it is shown as n square is equal to 8 and n square minus 8 1 is equal to 0. This is the one way. The second one is n square is equal to 8 square is equal to 64. The other way is n square is equal to 8 and this gives n is equal to 8. Some student says 8 into 8 is 64 and is equal to 8. So look at the way the child has arrived at the answer. All of these options are given full credit. So it does not matter that first child has written the full formula like this. We will also get the full credit. Somebody has been very smart and picked up the answer like this. He will also be given full credit. So no credit in case of, just pick up the question and then exactly replicate the same thing that comes there. Then apple trees and conifer trees are like this, given an explanation. Even one of the explanations given of why, by what ratio, which will grow faster. Apple trees are n into n and conifer trees are 8 into n. Both formula have factor of n, but apple trees have another n, which will get larger when the factor of 8 stays the same. If this reference is given, full credit given to the child. Or a reference of saying the number of apple trees increases faster because the number is being squared instead of multiplied by 8. Or number of apple trees is quadratic, which somebody wants to explain in the quadratic terms. Number of conifer trees is linear, full credit. You see, each of them are different ways to answer that question. All 4 attempts are given full credit. Look at the partial credit. And I love this because I wanted to actually pick up, and that's why I picked up this. Partial credit in case of the correct number of apple trees will increase more quickly, because if we use the table, we find the number of apple trees increases faster than the number of conifer trees. So if this happens, especially because number of apple trees and number of conifer trees are equivalent, the table shows the number of apple trees increases faster. So the child used table to draw the answer. So in this case, they have not looked at the formula, not done the mathematical calculation, but looked at the table which asks them to see how many apple trees, how many conifer trees, or how many pine trees to apple trees. They have drawn inferences from it. Even that is given partial credit. So this is an example that I wanted to share with you. Best of luck, all the best. Hope this was a useful session. Don't worry about anything. Tests have happened across 60 schools now. More than 15 or 16,000 students have already answered. These are all 15-year-olds across India, first time attempting an international level test, and all of them have loved it. There has not been a single case where we have encountered a problem that we were not able to solve. Our technical teams will be consistently in touch with your lab coordinators, and files will start coming to you if you have not already received it. And we are there to help. All the best. If there are any more questions, please email them to us. I've already overshot the time by around 11 minutes. Thank you for being patient. Thank you, everyone.